What if the biggest mystery in From was never the monsters? What if the town itself isn't a place at all? Not a cursed town. Not a simulation. Not a pocket universe. Not purgatory. What if every road, every monster, every voice in the forest, every impossible event we've seen across 4 seasons is actually part of a single broken mind trying desperately to remember something it was never supposed to forget? Because the deeper you look at From, the stranger one fact becomes. The town doesn't behave like a location. It behaves like a person. It reacts. It gets angry. It hides things. It manipulates memories. It creates symbols. It repeats trauma. And most importantly, it seems terrified of the truth. Now, that's a strange thing to say about a town. But by the end of this investigation, I think we're going to arrive at a possibility that changes everything. Because if this theory is right, then Boyd, Tabitha, Jade, Victor, Ethan, Julie, the monsters, the children, and even the man in yellow are not separate pieces of a mystery. They're all pieces of the same mind. And season May 4th have already revealed it. We just didn't notice. Let's start with something so obvious that most of us stopped questioning it a long time ago. The town doesn't follow physical rules. That's not unusual for horror stories. What's unusual is the specific way it breaks reality. Think about what happens whenever someone arrives. They aren't teleported. They aren't abducted. They aren't dragged through a portal. They're simply driving down a road. Then they see the fallen tree. Then the crows. Then the loop begins. No matter which direction they choose, they end up back in the same place. At first glance, that feels like a supernatural trap. But look closer. Because this isn't how prisons usually work. A prison keeps you from leaving. This place does something stranger. It keeps bringing you back. Again. And again. And again. That's not the behavior of a cage. That's the behavior of a thought. Think about how the human mind handles trauma. When something painful happens, especially something too painful to process, the mind doesn't simply let it go. It circles around it. It revisits it. It repeats it. Sometimes for years. Sometimes for decades. A person can spend an entire lifetime unknowingly returning to the same emotional wound. Different relationships. Different jobs. Different cities. Same pain. Same pattern. Same loop. The town works exactly like that. Everyone believes they're moving forward. Yet somehow they keep ending up in the same emotional place. Boyd keeps carrying responsibility. Tabitha keeps searching for lost children. Jade keeps chasing answers. Victor keeps preserving memories. Julie keeps revisiting the past. The characters change. The pattern doesn't. And that's where season 4 becomes interesting. Because season 4 quietly shifts the focus away from survival and toward memory. The monsters are still there. The danger is still there. But more and more of the story becomes about remembering. Hidden memories. Past lives. Forgotten events. Lost identities. Pieces of history buried beneath layers of fear. The show keeps pushing everyone toward the same destination. Not escape. Memory. That should immediately make us suspicious. Because if escaping the town was the real goal, remembering shouldn't matter this much. Imagine you're trapped in a maze. You don't solve the maze by remembering your childhood. You solve it by finding the exit. But From keeps insisting on the opposite. Every major breakthrough comes from recovering something forgotten. Victor remembers. Tabitha remembers. Jade remembers. The children want people to remember. Even the symbols seem designed to trigger remembrance. It's almost as if memory itself is the key. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What exactly is the town trying to remember? Because if the town behaves like a mind, then all these memories may belong to it, not to the characters, to the town itself. Now think about the children. Everything eventually leads back to them. The symbols, the visions, the bottle tree, the tunnels, the voices, the reincarnation story. The word remember. Everything points toward the sacrificed children, the original wound. And that's an important phrase. Original wound. Because minds organize themselves around wounds. Trauma creates structure. Pain creates patterns. The larger the trauma, the larger the structure built around it. Season 3 revealed that the town's foundation was a horrifying act. Children were sacrificed. Parents chose immortality over innocence. A crime so terrible that reality itself seems warped around it. And if we're viewing the town as a mind, then those sacrificed children stop looking like literal victims. They become something else. They become the memory the mind cannot face. The truth buried at the center. The thing everything else exists to avoid. Think about how dreams work. A dream rarely shows you the truth directly. Instead, it surrounds the truth with symbols, monsters, strange locations, impossible events, distorted people. The deeper the truth, the stranger the dream becomes. From operates exactly that way. Every mystery seems designed to distract from something deeper. The monsters keep people focused on survival. The forest keeps people lost. The symbols keep people guessing. The voices create confusion. The town constantly generates new puzzles. But what if all those puzzles serve the same purpose? Distraction. What if the town keeps creating mysteries because it doesn't want anyone reaching the center? Because at the center is the thing it cannot survive remembering. And if that's true, then we've been asking the wrong question for 4 seasons. The question isn't what is the town. The question is whose mind is it? Because a broken mind always belongs to someone. And in the next part, we're going to follow that question into the darkest place in From. Because once you start viewing the characters as pieces of a single consciousness, something shocking begins to happen. Their roles stop looking random and start looking deliberate. If the town is one broken mind, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Who are the people walking through it? Because a mind isn't just memories. A mind is made of different parts, different voices, different instincts, different ways of understanding the world. And the strangest thing about From is that almost every major character seems to represent one specific function. Not intentionally, not in a way the show openly explains, but in a way that becomes difficult to ignore once you see it. Let's start with Boyd. Because Boyd has always carried a burden that feels larger than leadership. He isn't just trying to keep people alive. He's trying to hold the entire town together. Whenever panic spreads, Boyd steps in. Whenever people lose hope, Boyd tries to restore it. Whenever everything starts falling apart, Boyd becomes the person desperately trying to keep control. That sounds less like a sheriff and more like an ego. In psychology, the ego isn't arrogance. It's the organizing center, the part of the mind that tries to keep everything functioning. The manager, the coordinator, the part responsible for maintaining order. And look at what the town keeps doing to Boyd. It attacks him constantly. Not physically. Psychologically. It pushes him, tests him, breaks him, tempts him, humiliates him. The town seems obsessed with making Boyd fail. Why? Because when the ego collapses, everything else collapses with it. A fractured mind cannot survive without some kind of organizing center. That's why Boyd suffers more than almost anyone else. He's carrying the weight of an entire consciousness. Now look at Tabitha. From the beginning, Tabitha has been pulled toward the children. Not the monsters. Not the symbols. Not the mystery itself. The children. Again and again she finds herself following their voices. Searching for them. Protecting them. Trying to understand what happened to them. Season 4 continues this pattern. Every major revelation keeps drawing her closer to the original crime. And if Boyd represents order, then Tabitha represents something different. Memory. Specifically emotional memory. The part of the mind that refuses to let pain disappear. Think about grief. Grief doesn't care about logic. Grief doesn't care about evidence. Grief simply remembers. Even when remembering hurts. Especially when remembering hurts. That's Tabitha. She keeps returning to the wound. The lost children. The forgotten truth. The thing everyone else would rather avoid. And that's exactly why she's so important. Because healing cannot begin until someone is willing to remember. Then we have Jade. The character, who may be the easiest to understand through this lens. Jade sees patterns everywhere. Numbers. Symbols. Connections. Codes. Structures. He wants answers. He wants explanations. He wants the puzzle solved. Whenever something strange happens, Jade immediately starts looking for the mechanism behind it. the system, the hidden design. In other words, he's the analytical mind, the rational mind, the part of consciousness that believes every mystery has an answer if you think hard enough. And that's why Jade keeps running into walls. Because some truths cannot be reached through analysis alone. The show repeatedly demonstrates this. Jade gets close. Very close. But every major breakthrough requires someone else. Someone carrying emotion, memory, intuition, meaning. The thinking mind can point toward the truth, but it can't fully reach it by itself. That's why Jade and Tabitha increasingly function as a pair. Logic and memory, reason and feeling, analysis and experience. A complete mind requires both. Then there's Victor. And Victor may be the most important character in the entire theory, because Victor does one thing better than anyone else. He remembers, even when nobody else does, even when memories disappear, even when history becomes fragmented. Victor keeps records, drawings, pictures, stories, fragments, evidence, proof that things happened, proof that people existed, proof that the past was real. Think about what a damaged mind does. It forgets. It buries. It suppresses. It hides. Victor exists to prevent that. He's the archive, the memory bank, the storage room nobody wants to enter. And that's why Victor is simultaneously fragile and essential. Without him, the town loses its history. Without history, healing becomes impossible. Now, let's talk about Julie. Because Season 4 quietly transformed Julie into something far bigger than we first realized. Julie can move through the story itself. Not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. She touches different moments in time, different layers of the town's history, different versions of reality. At first this feels like a supernatural power. But what if it isn't? What if Julie represents the mind's ability to revisit its own past? The ability to re-experience memory, to travel backward through trauma, to return to moments that were never properly processed. Every wounded mind does this. Again and again. People revisit old conversations, old mistakes, old losses, old regrets. The past refuses to stay buried. Julie may simply be that process made literal. A mind walking through its own memories. Which brings us to the figure standing at the center of everything. The man in yellow. Because every theory eventually leads back to him. And the more we learn about him, the stranger he becomes. He manipulates. He deceives. He changes appearances. He knows things he shouldn't know. He moves people like pieces on a chessboard. Most importantly, he never seems interested in killing everyone. That's what makes him different from the monsters. The monsters hunt. The man in yellow influences. The monsters kill bodies. The man in yellow attacks minds. And that distinction matters. Because whenever he appears, people become confused, divided, fearful, paranoid. They stop trusting each other. They turn inward. They become their own worst enemies. Almost as if his true goal is not destruction, but fragmentation. Keeping the mind broken. Keeping the pieces separated. Keeping the truth hidden. And if that's true, then the man in yellow isn't the ruler of the town. He's something far more dangerous. He's the force preventing healing. The force protecting the wound. The force making sure the truth never reaches the surface. Which means the final mystery may not be how to escape the town. It may be how to put the mind back together. Because once all these pieces are viewed as parts of a single consciousness, a terrifying possibility begins to emerge. The monsters, the children, the symbols, the voices, the loops, the reincarnations, the man in yellow. They may all exist for one reason, to stop something from waking up. And in the next part, we're going to follow that idea all the way to its conclusion. Because if the town really is one broken mind, then season May 4th have already revealed who that mind belongs to. And the answer changes everything. So if Boyd is order, Tabitha is memory, Jade is analysis, Victor is history, Julie is the ability to revisit the past, and the man in yellow is the force keeping everything fractured, then one final question remains. Whose mind is this? Because a broken mind doesn't exist by itself. It belongs to someone. And I think Season 4 has been quietly pointing us toward an answer that is both simpler and more disturbing than most theories realize. What if the town isn't the mind of a single character? What if it's the mind of the original town itself? Not the buildings, not the roads, not the forest, the people, the community that existed before the sacrifice. Think about what we learned about the town's origins. Long before Boyd arrived. Long before Victor. Long before anyone currently alive entered this nightmare. There was another group. The original residents. The people who made the choice. The people who sacrificed their children. The people who traded innocence for immortality. And that's where everything begins. Because history is full of terrible crimes. Wars. Murders. Betrayals. Massacres. But most communities survive them because eventually someone remembers. Someone tells the truth. Someone accepts responsibility. Someone mourns. Someone admits what happened. The original residents never did. Instead, they chose denial. They chose avoidance. They chose immortality. And that decision may have shattered something much larger than themselves. Imagine an entire community committing an unforgivable act and then refusing to face it. Not for years. Not for decades. Forever. What would happen? Psychologically speaking, the guilt wouldn't disappear. The grief wouldn't disappear. The memory wouldn't disappear. All of it would remain trapped beneath the surface. Growing. Mutating. Changing shape. Until eventually the entire community became organized around hiding its own crime. That's exactly how the town behaves. Every road leads away from the truth. Every mystery distracts from the truth. Every monster protects the truth. Every cycle repeats the truth without revealing it. It's as if the entire place exists to avoid remembering one terrible moment. And that is exactly what a traumatized mind does. It creates defenses, layers, barriers, distortions, anything necessary to prevent the wound from being touched. Now think about the monsters. For years, we've treated them as predators. And they are. But they're also strangely repetitive. They smile. They tempt. They imitate. They lure. They wear human faces. Almost like they're performing humanity instead of actually being human. Season 3 revealed why. They were human. The monsters are not invaders. They're remnants. Pieces of the original community frozen in the moment of its corruption. Immortality didn't save them. It trapped them. The thing they wanted most became the thing that destroyed them. And that's why they feel less like villains and more like symptoms. The town isn't being attacked by monsters. The town is producing them. Like nightmares produced by a sleeping mind. Like guilt produced by a guilty conscience. Like memories refusing to stay buried. The monsters are what happens when a crime is never acknowledged. The physical form of a truth that keeps trying to return. And suddenly something fascinating happens. The entire story starts pointing toward the same conclusion. The goal was never survival. The goal was never escape. The goal was never defeating the monsters. The goal is healing. Not healing individuals. Healing the mind itself. Think about every major revelation we've received. None of them opened an exit. None of them created freedom. Instead, each revelation uncovered another piece of history. Another hidden memory. Another forgotten truth. The deeper the characters go, the more the town resembles a therapy session. A painful one. A terrifying one. But a therapy session nonetheless. A gradual confrontation with buried trauma. A journey toward remembering. And suddenly the word the children keep repeating becomes incredibly important. Remember. Not run. Not hide. Not fight. Remember. Because remembering is the first step toward healing. The children don't ask for revenge. They don't ask for punishment. They don't ask for destruction. They ask to be remembered. That's a very specific request. And it suggests something extraordinary. The town may not want to destroy itself. The town may want to wake up. Think about dreams. A nightmare doesn't exist to torture you. A nightmare exists because your mind is trying to tell you something. Something you're refusing to hear. Something too painful to face while awake. The scarier the dream becomes, the more urgently the mind is trying to communicate. What if From is exactly that? A nightmare that has lasted for generations. A nightmare repeating itself because the message has never been understood. The sacrificed children are the message. The monsters are the message. The symbols are the message. The bottle tree is the message. The voices are the message. The repeated lives are the message. Everything points back toward the same forgotten truth. Remember what happened. Remember who was lost. Remember what was done. Because only then can the cycle finally end. And this is where the man in yellow becomes truly terrifying. Because if the town wants to wake up, then he wants the opposite. Everything he does creates division. Fear. Distrust. Chaos. Confusion. He doesn't protect the town. He protects the wound. He isn't guarding a kingdom. He's guarding a secret. The one thing that must never fully surface. Because the moment the truth becomes conscious, his power disappears. A nightmare can only survive while the dreamer remains asleep. The moment the dreamer wakes up, the nightmare ends. And I think that's what Season 4 has been building toward all along. Not a final battle. A final realization. Not the destruction of evil. The recognition of truth. Not escape. Awakening. Which brings us back to the question we started with. What is the town? I don't think it's a prison. I don't think it's a dimension. I don't think it's purgatory. I think it's a wound. A psychic wound so deep that it created its own reality. A wound that keeps generating monsters, mysteries, and endless cycles because it cannot bear to remember how it began. And if that's true, then the ending of From may be far stranger than anyone expects. The characters may never defeat the town, because the town isn't their enemy. The town is the patient, the thing suffering, the thing trapped, the thing desperately trying to remember what happened to it. And the moment that happens, the moment the original truth finally reaches the surface, the entire nightmare may simply disappear. Not because it was conquered, but because it was finally understood. And if that's where Season 4 is heading, then the biggest twist in From isn't that the town is alive. It's that the town has been trying to heal itself from the very beginning.